Thank you. Sure. Amazing. Yeah, not only is it Women's Month, it's also my birthday month. So, and it's my husband's birthday month, and it's also our anniversary month. So August is fantastic. Wow, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm quite overwhelmed, but that's thank you once again. Now I realize why there was a little bit of lateness this morning is because I have ever since I was old enough to drink wine, I have a great passion for wine, and being in Franschhoek, you were probably channeling my spirit last night with the free wine. So thank you very much for that, and. Yeah, so when I saw on LinkedIn that you were going to be having these sessions in Franschhoek, I thought to myself, wow, that's absolutely amazing. I mean, I absolutely love Franschhoek. We would live here if it weren't for my husband's allergies. He has terrible allergies and asthma. And what happens is that once a year, when they spray the grapes, it's kind of like one just has to evacuate the town. So, but we live in Somerset West, which is great. We've been in the Cape for nearly 14 years, and it's been a wonderful change for us in doing everything that we did. So, Xolani, thank you. Yeah, the source, I remember that. It was quite interesting because just a little bit of background. We had a massive battle that we had to fight in Anglo-American because it was decided in London that even though in the group we had 200,000 employees, we were only going to enable 60,000 of them with the knowledge management system. And I was completely outraged because I thought, here we go again. What we're doing is now we're putting up like another, silo and another symbol of preference, the haves and the have-nots. So, yeah, I fought a battle there. And it ended up costing me my career in Anglo-American, but that was all right. The good thing about that was that I was kind of like encouraged to leave. And at the time I had share options and the share price was great because the following year we hit the financial crisis. So the shares dropped. So I probably in retrospect, I definitely left at the right time. But, the thing is, Xolani, you're right. What you have to do is you have to be very careful about taking the light away from the king. And if you've ever read Machiavelli's book, The Prince, there's a very good example there of somebody who was a little bit too bright for the ruler at the time, and they got cut off at the knees. Okay, so what I did is I prepared some slides. I've always felt that it's the first sign of professionalism to arrive with a PowerPoint, whether you use it or not. But I am actually going to use it. So what I thought I would just kind of recall is I thought, knowledge management is also about how do we decide what history we're going to preserve and what we're not going to preserve. And so I thought, let's just do a little bit of a comparison, maybe from 1997 to today, and just to have a look at what has changed and what is really timeless. So I'm sure that some of you have heard this story from me about how originally I landed up in knowledge management. It was completely by accident, and this is the story that it relates to. So I was working at SAPI By qualification, my first qualification is a chemical as a chemical engineer. And I was working at SAPI and I managed one of their businesses. The business line was the brown paper line, which looked after brown paper bags, cement bags, dog food bags, all of that kind of thing. So I was affectionately known in SAPI as SAPI's bag lady. And one day we had a phone call from Lufo Packaging. And what Lufo Packaging do is that they do all the packaging for Nando's. And so we got a call from Tony Bento, who ran at the time Lufo Packaging. It's since been taken over by his son. And he was going thermonuclear over the phone. So we decided what we would do is we would just get in the car and we would go there. So what I did is, luckily, I was actually at the mill and he was 10 minutes away from the pulp mill, the paper mill. And so what we did is I jumped into the car with our quality manager and our production manager, and off we went to Tony Bento. And to this day, I still believe that if I wasn't a woman, he would have just clapped me, okay, as soon as he saw me. And what he did is he took us into the factory where they were doing all of these bags, and they would buy these massive rolls of paper from us, huge rolls, like tons worth of paper per roll. And then they would put it onto this bag making machine. And what it would do is it would fold it and cut it and glue it and print it and everything else. And on the other end came out these beautiful Nando's bags. And so we went around and he said, our problem is that what's happening is that the glue is failing, especially in cold climates. So a few months before that, Nando's had opened in the UK and in Canada. And what they found was that people were leaving the Nando's store. And after a few minutes, the bag was failing and the chicken was just falling out onto the sidewalk or onto the floor of the bus or train or whatever it was that they were using for their commute. And we walked around this factory and we had no clue what was causing the problem. And we were asking the obvious questions like, hey, have you changed the glue? Have you changed the ink? And all of this kind of thing. And as this was going on, he was getting angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier. And then eventually he just couldn't contain himself anymore. And he said to us, it's just unbelievable because you guys have no memory. That's channeling Tony Bento. You guys have no memory at all. You did exactly the thing 5 years ago. What you were doing is you were trying to push production through the machine, so you were adding more starch and it's interfering with the glue. Why don't you remember? And we realized that of the three of us, none of us had been in that team for more than 2 years. And we had actually lost our memory. So what happened was a few days later, we sorted it out. We told the guys, please stop adding so much lime. And we fixed everything. I didn't want you yet. Okay, back to the chicken. So when I got back to my office in Johannesburg, I told my colleagues all about this. And one of my colleagues, Theo, said, you have a knowledge management problem. Okay. And this was the point at which, like, what? What is that? Okay. I had no clue what knowledge management was. And he started explaining to me it's all about how we retain our corporate memory, and we have people and they're sharing their knowledge and we're learning from each other and we're fostering a culture of collaboration. And for me, this hardened chemical engineer, this was like, whoa, this is like way too fuzzy for me. But then I realized after some time that actually the soft stuff is the hard stuff. It's very, very easy to get the chemistry right. It's very easy to get the process right. But wow, when we need to start engaging with people. And that was actually when I grew up. That was when I became a real adult, was when I realized that I actually needed to start doing the soft stuff and not only the hard stuff. So what did we do? 1997, there was exactly one book that was out there. That was a Davenport and Prusak, something, Wealth of Knowledge, something about that. And so what we did is we learned from the few in the world who were doing something. And we discovered Buckman Laboratories, and they were really doing quite a lot. So learned a lot from Buckman Laboratories, and their knowledge management specialist at the time, Melissa Ramazan, and I actually became really, really good friends and lifelong friends. Unfortunately, she's passed away a few years ago. And what we did is we built the Knowledge Management Practitioners Group in South Africa, because we thought what we need to do is we need to manage our own knowledge about knowledge management. We need to share from each other, because the thing is that we had to avoid the IT companies who were trying to sell us document management and records management that was repackaged as a knowledge management solution. And, you know, the thing is, I really used to get so irritated because one of the consulting firms would come along, you know, all fancy and all of that, and, you know, nice shoes and, you know, fancy clothes and everything else. And they would present to our executive team and all of that kind of thing. And then I would have a slide deck kind of sent down to me from some executive's PA. And when I actually went into the properties of the presentation, I would see that this was actually a presentation where they'd just done a find and replace over the years, and they just put the new shiny thing onto it. And the nice shiny paper this time around was knowledge management, you know, but actually all it was just more and more consulting. So what we realized was that if we wanted to do something that was really going to make a difference, we had to think big. But as always, we had to start small and we had to move fast. Because the thing is, the longer it takes to do something, the less likely it actually is to happen. And so that is what we do. So what has changed? Okay. Since 1997, we've got a lot of technologies at our disposal, and we've got the cloud. And the thing is that when we were starting out in knowledge management, storage was very scarce and it was very expensive. So what we did is we were very careful what we stored and what we didn't store. We really had to make sure that it was a document that was actually more of a knowledge artifact than just simply a document. And I have to say, I mean, I find it nowadays is just there's just so much data, and it's very unstructured, but also for me, it doesn't really have much value. So yeah, and so that's why I asked AI to generate this picture for me of this like little monster that we can create, you know, just with all this data if we just dump it here and there. And they actually refer to it as the rot is spreading, redundant, outdated, and trivial information. Is that what happens is that starts to bloat and overshadow what is really valuable. And I must say, I've found that because what I'm doing is I'm using AI a lot, because for me, I always want to understand the latest technologies and what they're capable of, and also what they're not capable of. And I found that what I need to do is that I need to carry on my conversation with these large language models quite a lot and give it quite a lot of direction so that it can actually find its own way out of this rot. What I've realized is that AI it's not actually intelligent. It's just a very, very well-trained and very quick machine. And when I take that approach to it, I really, really enjoy it because it saved me so much time when it comes to really searching for information. But then I make sure that what I do is I use a deep search, or, I actually do search properly. And also what I've done is I've really heightened my level of interrogation of the information that I'm getting back. Because I feel that what I used to do is that I used to trust Google way too much and a lot more than I trust AI. And so I think that maybe what I was doing is that I was getting information out of Google that maybe wasn't necessarily the best. Whereas now I'm using a lot more scrutiny. The great thing is, though, that virtual collaboration is really working now. It's unbelievable because during the pandemic, what I did is I did a little bit of research because I thought to myself, we'd been using Skype for a long time and all of that kind of stuff. But I thought, I wonder when the first video call took place. And apparently it was in 1974 with Bell Communications in the US. They actually did like a television style call. So it's taken us a long time to start using virtual collaboration. But what is timeless is this whole idea about how we need to focus on being human-centric, and we really need to value tacit knowledge management. And a number of years ago, that would have sent chills to my bone. This tough engineer that I used to be. So this is a little story that I want to tell that actually goes back to my childhood. My father was a technical journalist, and what he did is he ran the internal magazine for what was then Grinnica Construction. There's been a lot of mergers along the way, so it's no longer Grinnica. And the founder of the business, Ula Grinnica, tasked my father with something, and he said, "Look, you've got this internal magazine, and what I want to do is I really want to turn this into a knowledge sharing tool. So what I'd like you to do is that I'd like you to interview those people who've been with the business the longest, and I want you to write up their stories and their success stories and their learnings and use the magazine to share that information with everybody." Because it was really interesting, because they used to print like tens of thousands of copies so that they had enough copies for everyone and every worker on every construction site to actually get a copy of the magazine, and it was a quarterly magazine. So the first time, my father gets in his car and he goes off and he drives to the end of the road, because of course at the end of the road, that's where the construction office is with the civil engineers. And he knocks on the door, and this aging civil engineer comes out and looks at my father and says, "Can I help you?" And my father says, "I'm Mike Sandrock. I'm here from the Grinnica Gazette, and I'd like to write, about all of your successes and things like that. So, that's what I'd like to do if you've got an hour or two." And the guy stands there, he looks at my father, and he says, "You know what? Get back in your car and go away." I don't think he said go away, but I was young, so my father said go away. Yeah? And he says, "You come back. You can only come back when you've got decent questions." Okay. So my father got into his car, drove back, cursing, grinding his teeth all the way. That night over dinner, tells us this whole story. He's still grinding his teeth, everything else. gets back into his car the next morning and he drives back to the end of that road and he knocks on the same door again. Guy comes and says, yeah, and now? I'd like to know from you, what is the most challenging project you've ever tackled? I'd like to know from you which suppliers you prefer to use and why. I'd like to know from you, if there was one lesson that you could give a new graduate, what would it be, etc. And from there, he was able to, he came up with good questions for the subject matter experts. And then he was able to respond, because we don't know what we know until we asked a good question. And what he found was that all he would have to do is interview these subject matter experts once, and then after that, he would get letters. And when we got email, he would get emails from them almost on a weekly basis. I'd forgotten about this. I remembered this. And it was so funny that blah, 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 blah. And what happened was that he opened these damn walls literally by just having good questions. So whatever I tackle now, my career is completely changed. What I'm doing now is with my husband, we are engaging youngsters all over the world in high school so that they can design, build, and test their experiment. And then we put it on the International Space Station for them. So we do completely different things nowadays. But what I do is that I seek out the specialists and I make sure I've got good questions to ask them. So what has always stayed with me, when Etienne Wenger and Richard McDermott and William Snyder wrote Cultivating Communities of Practice, that is the book that had the most impact for me on knowledge management. And what I find nowadays is that I relate everything. When I start a project, I don't treat it only as a project. I look at it as how would we build this as a community of practice? Because we need the subject matter experts. We need somebody to facilitate or administrate we're going to have a broad audience, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, communities of practice are always going to be an absolute fundamental. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to call on all of you in the room. That is my email address, judy@judisandrock.com, Judy with an I, not with a Y. And there's my phone number. I'm looking for collaborators because what I want to do is I want to refresh this book. There's a lot that's changed. There's also a lot that hasn't changed since I published the book in 2008. So I did a revision in 2009, but I believe that it really needs a great refresh. And all of you in this room are practitioners. So please, I was thinking, let's put together a book before some lighty uses ChatGPT to write the next book for us. Okay, great. Thank you all so very much. And really, I'm open to questions. Just make them good. Thank you.
But I've delegated you to do that. No, I was just asking, where's the old one? So that, we can, contribute from a known kind of position to, to that known.
Where is these?
It's Facebook, the one that wrote first.
Oh, the original one.
Yes.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that the original one was printed on paper. And I do still have some copies. They're actually with my friend Carl Schumacher in PE. So I do have some copies. I do have an electronic version. So what I could do is I could distribute the electronic version, and then we could take it from there. Yeah, and then what you can do is you can get AI to read it for you and come up with the highlights and ignore everything that's outdated, you know. Yeah.
There's another question.
With absolute pleasure.
I just want to find out from your experience, because we often report to managers that have no clue about knowledge management. And they are happy to send us to trainings, to conferences, to seminars, and so forth. But you get back to the office and you say, this is what you think is good for the organization, and you're proposing some changes. Now you're reporting that to the person who is supposed to represent you in the higher seats with no clue. And you find that even the recommendations you make, they don't really get to be implemented. How do you then rob them into the space for them to understand that they sell the product of knowledge management? Because often we struggle to get to represent our departments and sections to executive. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Yeah, it is. It's a tough one. What I realized over the years of my career, all the forms of my career, was that in any organization you also have politics, and so what you have to do is you need to also understand. In every organization, kind of like there's the written rules and there's the written hierarchy, but what you've got as well is you've got the unwritten rules and you've got the undocumented hierarchy and power positions. And when you have somebody who's in a senior position, one needs to acknowledge that the reason why they have that senior position is because what they do is that they cater to their own interests quite a lot of the time, and they know how to play the game. They understand the unwritten rules, and that is why they've been able to rise to the top. And so whatever you put forward, you need to make sure that you're appealing to two things: their personal agenda, and I'm sorry, I'm playing my cards completely open here. You need to make sure that you're playing according to their personal agenda, otherwise they are not going to take it forward. And second of all, you need to make sure that you are playing towards the organization's strategy, because any responsible executive team or board of directors or whether it's a non-profit or for-profit, whether it's public, private, what you'll have is you'll have that senior leadership team. And what they will do is that they will always support what is going to uphold the strategy and the implementation of the strategy. And so what you need to do is you need to frame it in terms of how it supports the implementation of the strategy. And also you need to frame it so that it's in the interest of that person that you want to then champion it and take it forward for you. And yeah, so in a way, that's what you need to do. And you need to make sure that your role is crucial to the organization. Knowledge and knowledge management is crucial to all organizations. It's all about how you sell it internally. And so that is why you need to be absolutely, completely 100% aware of how does this fit into the strategy. Another thing that you've also really got to be aware of, and that is money, the financial side of it. Because whenever a decision needs to be made, there's always going to be that person in the decision-making body, Because in no organizations are decisions made alone. Because if somebody makes their own decision, then what they do is then they're a cowboy, and they're not going to be tolerated for long. So it's always going to be some kind of committee or some kind of group decision. And in that team, the organization's always going to make sure that there's somebody there who is looking after the money and the financial side of it. And what they're going to do is they're going to say, show me the money. Or they're going to say, what is the payback on this? Okay. It's not only what is it going to cost us, but what is the payback? And often what you can do is you can say, this is something that I learned. I read one of Richard Branson's earlier books. He said, what you need to do in any organization is you don't only look at how much it's going to cost. What you look is you have a look at what is the cost of the downside if we don't do it. So in the Nando's example, we could not afford to lose the Nando's business because they took up such a large percentage of the product on that machine, that paper machine. We ran the risk that we would need to shut down that machine if we lost the Nando's business. So the cost of the downside was so much bigger than anything that we wanted to implement. So also have a look at that. Is like, what are the consequences if we don't do this? What are the consequences if we have people leaving the organization and they walk out of the doors with their knowledge, etc.? I hope that answers your question.
Hi, good morning. I was just telling my colleague before you came up, that's standing ovations and so much of praise. It's a lot of probably pressure on the speaker now to deliver.
Don't worry, she got a lot of drama lessons in high school.
and I must say you've done justice to it. So thank you for the presentation. So my question goes like this: that we have records management and we have knowledge management, and I think if you alluded to it in your presentation, and you said something about it, repackage and beware. So in every organization or most organizations, we have records management. And sometimes in an organization, you can actually repackage the department to become also knowledge management. So is there a opportunity for collaboration and probably amalgamation? And what is the do's and don'ts? And since we have I want to give you a second question. And that is the common thread over the 3 days was a lot to do with, people and people promoting knowledge management, accepting it and so forth and so on. What is that one thing you can tell us to get people to embrace it and want to make it a success and contribute towards knowledge management, the inputs to the system? We've talked a lot about processes and policies and systems, but it's people who's got to feed the system to make it a success. What's that one takeaway you can give us to make that a success? Thanks.
Okay, great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to answer the first question first and then the second question second. So even before I knew anything about knowledge management or even before I knew that knowledge management was a thing, what I always recognized was that one of the most important people in any organization was the librarian or let's call it maybe even the informal records manager, because that is always somebody who is able to connect the dots, really, really knows about how to manage information. Okay. We talk about, unfortunately nowadays we often talk about information managers as then they're like IT managers, but those are like technology managers, and also the thing is what's really interesting is about librarians and records managers is that they know who knows what. So they're very good navigators in an organization. And sometimes that person is not necessarily a qualified librarian or information specialist. What they could be is they could just be somebody who's been at the organization forever, and they just know who knows what. And so those are really important people. And the thing is that because I'm a highly technical person, I'm also very, very structured. So I've always liked the idea of structure and taxonomy, because if you put something in the right place and you've got a system, you've got a taxonomy that's developed actually for the organization, then it's very easy to find things after the fact, because it's kind of like logical that, and also then everybody knows where to put things and everybody knows where to find things. And what I've also found is that when I have a look at the file structure or my kind of like own personal taxonomy on my laptop, what it does is it also tells me what I'm busy with and what I do and what my priorities are. You know, so you can learn a lot about an organization by having a look at their taxonomy and how they do things. So I hope that answers your question. Is what you need? You have to have the structure. It's okay that things are unstructured, etc., but only for a while, because after that it's got to start getting structured. Also, the thing is that what you'll find is that as soon as you start developing structure around things, you stop the reinvention, you stop the repetition and reinventing of the wheel, because people then know what's already been done, and so what they can do is they can build on that instead of actually doing everything from first principles. So it has that kind of like. It starts getting its own snowball effect if you start with structure. So that's why I believe that records management is really, really very important from a structure perspective. Not necessarily retention. We know we have to do retention for certain legal reasons, etc. But I think that it really helps you understand what it is that you know and what you don't need to know. Then the second question was a little bit more fuzzy. Hey, what was it again? How do you get the buy-in? Okay, so this was something that I'd learned as well through the process, was that as human beings, what we like is we kind of like, we're a little bit like light. We have this wave particle duality to us. As human beings, we like individual recognition. But what we also want is we also want to be part of a group. We also want to be part of a community. So what you'll find is that organizations are able to keep great people, because what happens, they have processes that do both that. Is that individual excellence is recognized and rewarded, acknowledged, but also there's a sense of community. There's a culture that binds everybody together. So when you want people to contribute and collaborate, etc., you need to do both those things. You need to recognize them for their expertise and acknowledge, you have this experience, you have this expertise. We really, really would love you to contribute to it. Contribute. And then also the thing is also to create that environment where they feel that they are part of that community, they're part of that group. And that is why I always felt the communities of practice were so fantastic, is because what you do is you have a look at, and that's another thing that I use so much, Dunbar's numbers. I mean, everything I do, I'm always thinking like, what would the Dunbar number be for that? Do you guys know about Dunbar? Robin Dunbar and his numbers? Yes or no? Okay, so there's some, I'm getting some no's over here. Okay. Please Google Robin Dunbar. There is a Wikipedia site on him. Okay, he's still alive, and he's still working on as an anthropologist. So he's a social anthropologist, and what he did is he had a look at. He studied kind of like early civilization, and how we first got together in groups and villages, and then those grew into towns, etc., etc. And he came up with some numbers. And his first number is 7. If you have more than 7 people sitting at a table, let's say at a lunch or at a dinner, if you have 8 people, let's say, more than 7, the conversation will split into 2. So if you are going to have a core group in a community of practice, make sure that it's 7 or less people in that core group, because otherwise you're going to find that the topic of discussion is too diverse that it actually splits into 2 conversations and 2 subject matter areas. So that's the first number is 7. The second number is 15. What you'll find is that if you have 15 or less people in a group, then it's very easy to manage kind of like around a table or around a horseshoe, and you're able to keep everybody's attention, and you're able to have a situation where people can quite freely ask questions and give answers, etc., etc. You don't need somebody who's kind of like chairing and holding the reins. So that is why you'll find that sometimes if you've got a board of an organization, it could be larger than 7, but it's not going to be effective if it's larger than 15 people. And then the next number is 30. So at 30, what you find is that people start not really understanding if there are people in the room who are going to be making a contribution or if they're just spectators. Okay? And so therefore, people will only share their successes, they will not share their failures. Now, the thing is, we can learn a lot more from people's failures than we can necessarily learn from their successes. So when you have those groups where you want those subject matter experts to share their knowledge, make sure, please, that it's less than 30 people. And that includes virtual rooms, okay? Because with virtual rooms, you don't know who's out there and who's recording the session or what may be happening. So people will not share their failures if they think that there's some people who are simply just spectators and they're not necessarily going to be contributing. And then the numbers grow after that. But, you know, those 3 numbers of Dunbar, 7, 15, and 30, I use a lot. Because also the size of the group shapes the conversation. Wouldn't it be strange? Yes. Okay. Wouldn't it be strange if there were like 6 of us in here and I was standing here at a microphone? It would be like, what? Where not Judi? Sit down at a table and, you know? But, you know, in a room this size, yeah, it's actually really okay that I've got the microphone. Okay. Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It's not a question. Not a question. It's just a challenge. I'm Makwena Mulala, work for the National School of Government. We'll collaborate with you. Thank you for calling for the collaboration. But one thing that is very important is each road that one travels in the career, you step on the shoulders of the giant, and you are such a giant.
Oh,
so
thank you very much.
And we are going up. But my challenge is, I would like to, you know, you make these things look easier because you speak from a professional's point of view. You've practiced it. You didn't theorize it. You practice it every day. That's very, very important to me. But also I want to give you a challenge. I think via KMSA, maybe you must have a master class on building communities of practice, especially among government and private sector, because we are struggling in that environment. Then I think we need to find a space. And you coming from corporate and linking it will be very much wonderful to hear. But thank you for coming and thank you for being here. And then KMSA, you have made, I think this conference this far have made a very great impact. Don't drop the ball.
Great.
Chairperson,
Great.
colleagues, thank you so much for engaging Judi. And more than anything, we always say we take advantage of the legends. So I wish we had more time, but time is always we're a thief. Yeah. So colleagues, on behalf of KMSA, of all of us, we've got a token of appreciation again. Jeanette will give you as you walk down. But thank you so much, Judi, for coming. And I hope you are still here. Please don't go. You are here. Yes, please. Yes, we still want to talk to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.